Welcome back to another Combat Mission Shock Force unit guide where we're going to hit up the letter F with the Fennek reconnaissance vehicle. This is used by the German and Dutch forces introduced in the NATO module, but you may have encountered it first as the AAF Strider in Armour 3. It's not a particularly complex vehicle, it's basically a small armoured box on wheels, but it does have some interesting features. The Fennek was originally developed as a private venture by SP Aerospace and Vehicle Systems between 1997 and 2000. That company would go bankrupt in 2004, but the Fennek design was taken over, produced and iterated on by Dutch Defence Vehicle Systems and the German company Krauss Maffei Wegmann. In total, 632 vehicles have been built, and because the design is essentially a small armoured truck, it's had the usual experience that flexible platforms have and diversified into several variants, from command and control vehicles to air defence. The Fennek entered service in 2003 and saw combat in Afghanistan, but by now it's getting a little long in the tooth. It looks like the Royal Netherlands Army is investing in an upgrade programme, while the Bundeswehr is looking at replacing it with a larger, more heavily armed six-wheel design. Looking at the Fennek in combat mission, the main feature at the front of the vehicle is the huge wraparound windscreen. This gives the driver a really good field of view from his unusual central position, but although made of bulletproof glass, it is an obvious vulnerability. This speaks to the Fennek's role as a light reconnaissance vehicle. It's not designed to tank incoming fire, it's designed to avoid damage by taking advantage of terrain and its low profile to stay out of sight. As such, it's only armoured against small arms fire and shrapnel. In combat mission terms, while pixel tripping with assault rifles won't engage even when ordered, and squad level GPMGs like the PKM won't penetrate the armour, that's really the limit. Even the PKM can score partial penetrations through the windscreen and effectively degrade the fragile subsystems on the roof. Coming round to the side, there's not much to see here. We've got a long narrow window for the passenger compartment plus a door behind the front wheel. Moving on to the rear, we have the engine. As usual, grills and hatches are a dead giveaway. The Fennek scored a total of 558 points in the vehicle mobility test. Lower scores are better here. We can compare the Fennek's 558 to the 8-wheeled Striker sitting at 610 and the tracked BMP-2 sitting at 499. That said, the Fennek did have a hard time with the ground test. It bogged a total of 6 times in the mud. That might be a reflection of four-wheel drive, making for a higher ground pressure versus tracks or more wheels. If we remove the ground test, the Fennek is sitting on 389 compared to 418 and 417 for the Striker and BMP-2 respectively. So I think we can say that the Fennek is suitably speedy and mobile for a modern reconnaissance vehicle, providing it doesn't get stuck in the mud. Also on the rear of the Fennek, right at the top, we have a pair of smoke launchers. These deploy bog standard smoke in Shock Force 2 rather than fancier multi-spectrum stuff. That's perfectly adequate for Shock Force, where the opposition is not well equipped with thermal optics. Getting up onto the roof, the rear third of the Fennek is taken up by the engine. Once we get past that, we get to the fun stuff. First, on the left of the vehicle, we have a remote-controlled sensor pod mounting day and thermal cameras, as well as a laser rangefinder. In reality, this is mounted on an extendable mast, allowing the Fennek to stay hidden behind walls, buildings, slopes, or in forests, and, for want of a better term, raise periscope when it wants to observe. Sadly, this functionality isn't present in Combat Mission Shock Force, but even if it can't be raised, the sensor pod is still a very powerful spotting tool. Moving forward, we have 3 hatches in a triangular arrangement, 2 left and right for the passengers and 1 up front for the driver. There are only 3 seats, so that means that everyone can put their heads up if need be or escape if the side doors are blocked or disabled. These hatches don't see that much use in combat mission. The only one that really gets used is the right-hand hatch because it serves the Fennek's remote control weapons system. This is mounted just forward of that hatch and comes in 3 flavours. The German forces mount MG3 general purpose machine guns or GMG automatic grenade launchers. Both Dutch variants mount the classic M2 Browning. All of these can be fired remotely from inside the vehicle, but the gunner will have to open the hatch, stick his head up and manually reload it. Speaking of reloading, the MG3 comes with over 2,000 rounds of 7.62 NATO ammunition. The GMG has 288 rounds of 40 by 53mm high explosive, and the 50 cals come with over 1,000 rounds of API. These are all pretty common weapons, so I won't linger on how effective they are. In any case, the Fennek variants in CMSF2 are functioning in either reconnaissance or transport roles, so if they're actually engaging the enemy, you might have gone wrong somewhere. All the weapon mounts have thermal images though. If you get into trouble, the best option is probably to pop smoke and disengage, exploiting the ability to fire through your own defensive smoke on the way. Finally, there are 4 variants of Fennek in Shock Force. The Germans have the same reconnaissance variant, armed with either the MG3 or GMG. The Dutch have a reconnaissance variant with the 50 cal, and the MRAT, which is exactly the same, but it carries 3 extra missiles for the Dutch Gil ATGM, otherwise known as the Spike ATGM. All 4 types stow some extra ammo for dismount, 400 rounds of 7.62 and 500 rounds of 5.56, plus a Panzerfaust 3 with a couple of AT rockets. One combat mission oddity to bear in mind is that when selected as part of a formation, such as part of German reconnaissance companies or Dutch medium manoeuvre battalions, your Fennecs will have the full 3-man crew, whether that's because they're carrying a 3-man team or because they have a 2-man team and a driver. Fennecs added from the single vehicles tab only have 2 crew, driver and gunner. I say gunner because that pixel trumpet evidently operates the mounted weapon, but he is doing so from the left-hand passenger seat, meaning there is no one in the right-hand seat available to pop up and reload the weapon when it runs dry. So be aware that adding Fennecs to your force from the single vehicles tab is, should we say, suboptimal. That's it for the Fennek then. It's a bit of a shame the extendable mast for the sensor pod doesn't work in-game, and the 3-man crew arrangement is somewhat restrictive, but it's still an interesting and useful vehicle, even if there's not really that much to talk about. Hope you all enjoyed this video and found it interesting. If you'd like to watch these a week early and support the channel, you can do so via Patreon and YouTube memberships. Whether you do or not, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.